And what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. It's time to it's time to take a dive into a club with some big names through the door already. It is Atlanta United. We are joined once again with our friend Sydney from Scarves N Spikes. How you doing, my man?
And we're doing good. Great to be back with you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well, man. Really excited to get back with you. I know it was easy first choice. We were like, all right, who we getting for Atlanta? We need to sit back on, no doubt. So really excited to have
Appreciate
you.
it.
Yeah, really excited to have you again. I know Connor sends his regards, as I've said pretty much on every episode for our listeners. He won't be here today, but I know that he is really looking forward to this one, being an Atlanta supporter himself. But the one thing
Yeah.
I think we're all looking forward to is Scarf of the Week, of course. And you said you had a special one you wanted to shout out.
Yeah. So, disclaimer, I'm at my fiance's place, like I told you before the show. My scarf is at my place, but last year, Atlanta United came out with a MARTA collection. For those that don't know, MARTA is our public transportation system here in Atlanta, light rail and bus. So, they came out with a MARTA collection. There are t shirts, hats, hoodies, a whole nine yards. They also came out with a special MARTA scarf, which is incredible. It looks great, very well put together by the team at Atlanta United and MARTA as a partnership. So, fortunately, I don't have it with me, but there's photos online. You can look it up. I may tweet it out and tag you guys on it so you can see what it looks like. But that's my scarf of the week.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. One of the things we were talking about with Pharma Soccer from Nashville was how cool you could go with scarf design. Like
Yeah.
MLS in general, generally pretty bland, but if you look at the locations that they're in and how unique you can make them, Atlanta to Nashville to New York to Portland to all these different areas, you can do so much with them. So I do hope their scarf game steps up. I I hate that I have to show this one off because this was supposed to be ours as
Yeah.
Red Bull, but the 2018 MLS Cup that was robbed
Bad
from
memories from
us.
that year, right?
Yeah, well, that was robbed from us by our own owners for taking Jesse Marsh too early. Meets in the front, got the Concord. Yeah, whatever. Whatever. Let's
Came close
talk.
last year though, so
Yeah. It's a nice scarf. I won't doubt it. I wish it was Red Bull instead of this one. But anyways, we're gonna talk 2025, of course. But I think we'd be missing out on a lot if we didn't highlight how we got here in 24 because Atlanta United, their nicknames the Cinderellas. If you ask me, they made 2024 go from something of a nightmare to something of a memory. Because after
yeah.
a dismal start to 2024, the dismissal of Gonzalo Pineda and a Leagues Cup group stage exit and a U.S. Open Cup loss to USL Championship side Indy 11, Atlanta found their way to sneak into the playoffs by a miracle on the final day, getting a result and all the help that they needed to sneak into a dream matchup with Inter Miami. And we all know what happened next. Brad Guzan took some horse tranquilizers and willed Atlanta to a 2 wins in 3 game series to knock out Inter Messi and friends and move on in the playoffs, eventually losing out to Orlando City. But in 2025, it's now Ronnie Deila's team, a former MLS Cup champion of his own, looking to guide the team through MLS and Leagues Cup, hoping for a better result in 2024. Your thoughts on 2024 as it happened?
No, that you mentioned that Andrew, the playoff run was magical. Nobody gave Atlanta half a chance to beat Miami, right? For the reason you mentioned, Lionel Messi and throwing in there Luis Suarez, Busquets, Alba. They're the darling of MLS, won the Shield. And Messi's season with those guys, just a terrific team in 2024. And a lot of pundits, right, had them written in pen to get to MLS Cup, not only get to MLS Cup, but to win the entire thing. And then here comes Atlanta, like he said, needed the and let's not forget that goal that Duncan McGuire scored or purportedly scored. If that goal counts, I mean, we're talking about a whole different. We're having a whole different conversation, right? So that's another kind of twist to the tail on that goal getting disallowed. And by the way, that it was the laws of the game that allow that to get disallowed. I know Orlando fans will think differently, but that's a whole other topic. But long story short, it's just paper over the cracks of what was a dismal season. The team, I just feel like tuned Gonzalo Pineda out. He was a player's coach, maybe to a fault. And I don't think he was a coach to really get in the guy's faces to say you need to step your game up or you're not going to play, essentially. So I don't think he was the right coach to be that for this team. So he was fired. I think it was the right decision. I think they needed a new voice in that locker room. I like that Rob Valentina was brought in as interim again, a very well respected voice in the locker room, really inspired this team to again get to the playoffs on the final day, make that playoff run, beating Montreal the wild card, despite Joseph Martinez doing what he did, and then beating Miami and really just running out of gas, really, against Orlando City. But again, paper over the cracks. 2025 whole new team. Ronnie Deila, Latte Lat. We'll talk about him, I'm sure, later on. Miguel Miron coming back. So I mentioned this on Scarves and Spikes. I don't think the vibes have been as high as for Atlanta United since. You could argue 2019. You could argue that's the last time this team has really been good. They came a win away from MLS Cup in back to back, hosting MLS Cup in back to back years. Looking back, that's the last time this team was really, really good. So
Right.
hopefully 2025 harkens back to those days.
Yeah, I like that. And I did want to kind of pick your brain a little bit. Of course, we talked about Pineda out and it being the right decision. I think most people will agree with you there. I think you put it perfectly. He didn't instill this confidence of like, yeah, I'm going to play for you, right? It didn't feel like the players out there were
Yeah.
playing for him. It felt like they were playing
Yeah.
because he was there, right? So now Ronnie Dalla comes in. How do you feel about this appointment? Are you happy with it? I know they were linked to a lot of names, both officially and kind of in hopes, whether you're talking about Jim Curtin and then you're talking about Patrick Vieira and all the other players. You end up with Ronnie Dalla. Your thoughts on the appointment?
No, I think it was a great hire. Like he said, he has his track record of success in MLS already, having already won MLS Cup. And the cynic's view will be, hey, he won it because of his players. You of course have Pepe Castellanos, who led that team back when they won MLS Cup. Sean Johnson, you go on down the line. So he's had some terrific players, or he had some terrific players when he was with NYCFC. Didn't have quite the success overseas that he enjoyed in MLS, which a lot of people kind of look at as a strike on his record, but you have to look at it's a different game. The expectations are much higher. The owners are more fickle. They'll fire you, 10 games into the season if they have to. So different game than MLS. I really like the hire. I think, he's somebody that knows the league, knows what it takes to win in this league, can manage personalities in this league. It's a good man manager in that regard, and he's really set on the table, hey, if you're not progressing the way I think you need to progress, you're not going to play for me. So I think he's laid down the law really in this first few months as manager in a way that Pineda never did. You mentioned players that really played for Pineda, they played because they were out there because he was on the sideline. I think they'll really play for Dyla, not because that they're scared, but they know his expectations. They know that he has high expectations for them to not just perform, but to win. And as he instills his tactics and his mindset on the team, I think there will be some growing pains, but I think the team will be very competitive because of it, not just because of the players, but because of what he can bring to the table from a tactical and experiential standpoint.
If you ask a certain group of fans, of the red variety, if you will, that MLS Cup that he won wasn't because of the players. It was because of COVID and Mickey Mouse, and it doesn't really count anyway, right? It's got a little asterisk next to it. It is what it
Yeah.
is, right? And if you want a comparison of like how important it is, you check the size of their banner, right? You can't see their banner because it was such an irrelevant cup, and we can go on and on and on and on and on and on and on about that if you really want to. But I think people want to chat more about Atlanta United's 2025 because, like you mentioned, they brought in some decent players to help out Dyla in his first year. Who do you think is the best addition so far?
I mean, I could go in totally different direction here. Obviously, this guy named Miguel Miron, I guess he's pretty good for Atlanta when he played with them a couple of years ago on
Yeah, he's
MLS
all
Cup,
right.
coincidentally. Yeah, he was okay. I mean, that's an easy go to. He knows the team already. He knows the culture already. He knows what it takes to win in this league. He's an older player than he was right now, and I say that not in a negative connotation, but very positive. So he knows now, having been in Newcastle, having played in Champions League at the highest levels of the sport, right? He knows what it takes to win and lead and be the player that is respected. I can't think of anybody that has a bad thing to say about Miguel Miron, whether as a person or whether as a player or as in the locker room. He just is a very respected player, a player that everybody loves, has a great temperament, great with the fans, always smiling. So I could definitely go in that direction. But obviously, Emmanuel Latilat is the big one, the big piece of the puzzle. This team, after Yorgos Yakimakis left for Cruz Azul last year, just struggled mightily. I think the issues were far deeper, and he's made no bones about it since he went to Liga MX. But they needed striker help in the big way. They had Jamal Tiare, of course, on their roster. They had Daniel Rios on the roster, but obviously none of those are Yogo Sakamakis, and none of them can match what he did. So Latte Lat, considering what he did at Middlesbrough, is a big piece of the puzzle to what they're looking to do in Atlanta United. Comes over obviously with that huge price tag, reported 22 million MLS record, breaking the one that Cincy set for Denke a few months ago. So with that, it's going to be loads of expectations, and you're not paying 22 million to get him from Middlesbrough for him to score 10 goals, right? You're bringing him over to score 20 goals. You're bringing him over to compete for Golden Boot. You bring him over to compete for potential MLS MVP. Certainly bring him over because you think he is a missing piece, and the biggest missing piece to help you win MLS Cup. So I think in that regard, Latte Lot is the easy answer. That being said, Almiron certainly his importance to the team, not only from a technical standpoint, from an on-field standpoint, but from a locker room standpoint, certainly can't be overstated.
Yeah, me personally, I for one am thrilled about the 31-year-old striker Keimin Tagashi, who you signed from the Japanese second division, who has scored two total goals in that division. No, of course not, right? Miguel Almiron, Latte Lat. I mean, both big hitters. I do think there is a an underrated shout for Matthias Klick here, not just for his ability on
Yeah,
the ball and his ability to play in that center midfield, but for the fact that we were able to trade him and not put him on a DP contract. So
I
make
know.
DC United still use their DP slot for you,
Yeah,
I think is absolutely brilliant. But yeah, I think you hit all the important parts on the two big ones. So I don't need to dive in there. But
right.
listen, you want to talk ambition, right? I talk a lot about Charlotte being like the face of ambition. MLS are always tied to these players and people who you would never think would go to Charlotte and play in MLS. They're always like trying to get them in.
Right.
Atlanta said hold my beer and said let's go, and they went and broke all these records, man. So I'm really excited for that. But to do that, they had to let go of some players as well. I excluded the three kind of mid-season ones that we knew were happening already: the Wiley, the Giacomakis, and the Almadas. But I'll let you include them here as well if you'd like, or if there's somebody else that you would include here. But who's the biggest loss so far?
Yeah, I think the biggest loss, and it's tough to say because, this is a team that, it's been a season of transition, off season of transition. We mentioned, players that were, or individuals that were out for Atlanta United. You certainly have to mention Carlos Bocanegra and their transition away from him, which I think was a move that was always going to happen. I think him and Garth Lagerway, from a standpoint of working together, I think their philosophies were just so different. So I don't think they were that relationship. I think it was a professional relationship, but it was a relationship that wasn't going to last a long time. So kind of moving off of that, though, I think the some of the biggest kind of departures for LA United, just from a depth standpoint, right? I think Daniel Rios, so I mentioned the backup striker. I would say the backup to the backup striker. Certainly saw a little more playing time after Yakimakis left. TRA kind of emerged as the top striker, the striker of choice for Atlanta United. Tyler Wolff, who, I mean, it's kind of tough because Tyler Wolff, he had some good moments, certainly with Atlanta United, but probably not much to keep himself in the fold, right? Of course, he has a rich heritage, comes from a rich soccer family. Josh Wolff, of course, we all know his story. Atlanta native, U.S. men's national team players. So Tyler's departure was a little surprising, but not really, because you didn't know how much time he would spend in the team. So that's a departure. I think the biggest ones, though, were of course Almada, who you knew he was always going to be sold, right? It was no surprise that he left. But I think Yakimakis, of course, is the big one. It kind of blindsided everybody to some extent. One day he was here, and then we hear, oh, Cruz Azul is looking at him. Cruz Azul has put up a X transfer fee are interested in bringing him in on an X year contract. So I think that certainly is the biggest departure. I think if he stays for all of 2024, I think it's a different story for Atlanta United from a standpoint where they maybe don't need to clinch playoffs on the final day of the regular season on decision day. I think they're in a much better spot again. I think we're having a little different conversation, but yeah, definitely think Yakimakis is the big one. Certainly Almada, of course, because when those two left, the ship just became rudderless, I think.
Yeah, I think everybody saw that, and it was always this idea like, okay, you got 50x million dollars to spend, like step up,
Yeah.
because if you don't, you're in trouble. Because we saw what happened when you don't have players of that caliber. You better figure it out. Um, but honestly, like out excluding those three, this doesn't feel like a window that you're going to look at and be super heartbroken over. I don't think. Like you mentioned, you got a little bit of depth loss, but I think you filled it in fine. Like I don't think there's any position you're like, man, I really wish we addressed that in the offseason or didn't let this player go, right? I think again, maybe Red Bull bias showing here, but I think Dak should have given it one more year, hit 20, like get through it. But really excited
Yeah.
to see him on MLS season pass, of course. But
Yeah.
another name that popped up, Nick Firmino, somebody I thought like was going to be an academy guy that could have broken through. Was he ever going to break through in this system where they are loving their high profile attackers? Probably not. I don't think it was going to be
Yeah.
in the works for him. But he does end up
Yeah.
with Lexington SC, which is I worked for Lexington FC before SC came in and took over.
Right.
I missed it by a year, so I still claim that as my USL
Yeah.
one side. But he'll tear it up there. He's going to be great.
Yeah, and yeah, I think they rushed him. I think Atlanta United rushed him into the first team. I think that you know he had, of course, tremendous success with Atlanta United too before he was signed to the first team contract. But I feel like he could have used a little bit more seasoning down there. He's one of those players that may be good for MLS Next Pro, maybe good for League Two or League One, I should say. Maybe a championship player, USL championship player, a backup, I would say, but I don't know if right now he was MLS level, certainly not last year. So I wish him all the best. Hopefully he does well in Lexington, Kentucky. I hope he, tears it up. Hope he has tremendous success there and can eventually get himself on an MLS roster. But I think last year, A, they rushed him, and B, there's nowhere to put him, really.
Yeah.
So again, all the best to him, but just not a situation where he could have really seen the field
Yeah.
consistently, I think.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. But I think it was Connor last year who picked him as the breakout player for Atlanta. I think he was really high on him, and it didn't quite work
Yeah.
out. But this year, we gotta ask again: who's the player to watch? Who's going to break out this year? That's going to have a year that people aren't expecting out of him.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this is a tough. I'm just kind of going through the names mentally in my head. I'll get some flack for it, but I'm kind of feeling Edwin Mascara. I think. Well, I'll give you two names. I'll give you two
Sure,
names.
sure.
I'll give you Edwin Mascara because I feel like Rodney Dial has said, you know what, we need, we have a lot of wingers, but we're going to need a lot of wingers. We're playing in so many competitions, of course, MLS regular season, Leagues Cup. They're going to need to put in some bodies to fill those needs. So, I think Edwin Mascara could really stand to be a player that can thrive in the system that Rodney Dial prefers because of his pace. Maybe not the highest goal scorer, maybe not the highest assist getter, but I think he's a player that could thrive in the system. Luke Brennan is another player, young, hasn't taken quite that next step in his professional development to fully affect the first team. Played about 7 matches with the first team in MLS action, though. So I think he's another player that can kind of step things up. Shande Silva certainly, I'll throw him in there, and then Will Riley. I'll throw out Will Riley, former Lady United Academy player, used to play with Lady United too, went to college, came back to Atlanta United, signed as a homegrown. So I don't know how much time he'll get on the field with the first team, certainly as a backup, but I think in the right situation, given the right amount of minutes, given the right amount of playing time, I think he could break out a little bit and be a good, solid depth piece for Atlanta United. So I know you kind of asked for one name, but I threw up maybe a few names that
That's
could.
all fine and dandy because that's what we're here for, right? We're here to preview. We're here to talk about everything.
Right.
For me, it's not a secret my admiration for this player, but Pedro Amador is somebody I think
Yeah.
genuinely, and this is crazy because he does play outside back. I think he's a best 11 defender in 25. I think he's
Mm,
going to make and maybe that's a bold take, but I think he is going to be so good, not only getting forward and serving great balls and getting a ton of assists, but I like the way he defended too. Like I watched him against Miami and he was
yeah,
solid against Miami, right? So I think this breakout isn't necessarily him going from here to here, but having
right.
his recognition go from here to here, right?
Yeah. And I think the thing with Amador, unfortunately, he's taken a knock. So he's out 2 to 3
Oh,
weeks. So he's going to miss the entire preseason. Hopefully, he is back healthy for the regular season opener against Montreal the 22nd. So I think if he can stay healthy, I certainly think he'll become a tremendous player. He already is a tremendous player with this team. It took him a few matches to get his legs underneath him in this league, but once he did, man, he was incredible. Just his service, his delivery inside the box from that left side was just a huge benefit for Atlanta United. If he can build that chemistry with, we assume, Saba Lipshanica on the left, as he moves over and Miguel Morel takes his place on the right side, I think this team will be very, very strong. I think that left side is going to be very, very key for Atlanta United.
yep, yeah, and I said maybe it's a hot take. I don't know, but I wouldn't be shocked to see him thrown into the best 11
Mm.
conversation. I just I got a feeling, and now the problem is every breakout player I picked in the last like four of them all have some sort of knock. So I don't know if it's I got something that's cursing some players it seems, but
Yeah.
we're gonna pretend that didn't happen and we're just gonna move on with it and say we're at this
Right.
point now where we want to highlight the one big question still surrounding Atlanta United. For you, what is that question?
One big question is how will this team deal with depth? I mean, there's still a lot of areas where they need some depth. So I feel like that's the first question. Deila said, we're good on outside back, but I just feel like they need that depth piece on the outside back at left and right. Of course, Brooks Lennon is injured for a few more weeks, so he won't start on February 22nd. Ronald Hernandez on the right. Pedro Amador, does he start? Is he healthy enough on the left at left back? So that's a question mark. So I think that's the big question. I think the biggest question though is how will Latte Lot integrate himself into MLS? I mentioned, they paid $22 million to bring him over from Middlesbrough, where he was terrific, to MLS. It's a new country, new culture, new league. So it's not for everybody, right? Some players come in like they're just like that, they adjust. They have no problem adjusting. I think with Latte Lot, the margin for error, considering how much money they paid for him to bring him over and how much his salary is. Of course, we won't see that until the spring. I feel like that margin for error is thin. I feel like, if he goes I mean, 5, 6, 7 matches without scoring, there's going to be some questions answered, and that's the nature of the beast, right? $22 million is again MLS record. He's going to be paid. I don't know how much he'll get paid, but I assume 3.5 million. Certainly among the top, I would say the top five strikers in MLS, if not the top 10. So that's my biggest question. How long will it take for him to integrate with himself? How long will it take for him to build that chemistry? He just got his visa when we're recording this on Thursday, on
Mhm.
the 13th. How long will it take for him to get his legs underneath him and build that chemistry with Salvador Nitsa, build that chemistry with Miguel Marone, Alexei Miranchuk, build that chemistry with him? How long will that take? And then just one real quick answer, a second answer to your question is
Mhm.
Alexei Miranchuk. He came on middle of last season. He had some success, but for the amount that they paid for him, not quite what some fans were looking for. And there's been some questions, right? Is he conducive? Is his production conducive of the amount of money that Atlanta United paid for him? So I feel like he needs to have a hot start. He needs to continue to develop that chemistry with Saba, build that chemistry with Almiron. Latte Lot certainly in order to elevate his game. What we hear about Latte Lot is his speed. His speed is a asset, and hopefully Mirachuk and him can build that relationship, build that chemistry, and become one of the best attacks in MLS.
Yeah, mine's very similar to yours or one of yours because I love how you kind of jumped around because you had a lot of questions there, but they all tied together, which I think is important because
Yeah.
that's kind of how this whole thing works. You get one big one, and it usually branches out into the little ones that you have to answer the little one before you get to the big one, right? So I like that. But yeah, mine was just kind of very similar, right? How fast is this attacking group going to gel and get together and work together, right?
Mhm.
Because we've seen it before, and I'll pick on one just because we did their preview just before yours in Chicago, right? We went in and they went in big on Shaqiri, they went big on Kuipers, they went big on these all these players around them, but they never got together. And what happened is they finished dead
Yeah.
last in the East, right? So that's going to be super super important. But what I'll say is, I think your question, my question, they both tie into this last section here, which is where is this team finishing? When that group gels and how long it takes for them to gel is going to impact their finish in the table. So where do you think they're finishing this year?
Well, I mean, this may sound like a homer answer, so I'll just kind of disclaim that. But the amount of talent on paper, the amount of potential attacking firepower, if this team can remain healthy throughout the season to avoid any major injuries, which, of course, are going into 2025 with a big one in Brooks Lennon at right back, as we mentioned. But if outside of that, they can avoid major injury and this attack clicks, this attack, you know, kind of coalesces and builds chemistry quickly, this could be a team that makes MLS Cup and wins the Eastern Conference. So again, that's kind of a homer answer. That's kind of an answer from somebody that's covered this team since the beginning, right? So I feel like some people kind of roll their eyes and say whatever. I feel like at minimum, if this team is not a top four team in the East, it'll be a massive disappointment. Again, with the attacking firepower that they potentially have on paper, with so many names that they've brought in, not just from a DP standpoint, but we mentioned Mateus Clique had tremendous success with DC, and Atlanta United got him for really a song. So I think he's going to be a big part of that. Amador, of course, we mentioned him. Lennon when he comes back. That midfield pairing of we haven't mentioned Bartek Slish at all. We haven't mentioned Tristan Muyumba. We haven't mentioned Jay Fortune really. So again, on paper, this will be a very good team. I think a top four finish in the East. It's not out of the question. I'll go on the record and say they finished fourth. I think they finished fourth. I think Miami, if their stars remain healthy, I think they'll win the Shield again. Columbus, I feel like even without Cucho, I think Wilfred Nancy is just such a tremendous man manager that he'll be able to get this team back to where it needs to be. I think Cincinnati will be third. I think Evander is a tremendous addition for them, even with Lucho Costa going to Dallas. So I think they'll be tremendous. But it depends on how he and Denke get along or get on the field from the attacking standpoint. And I think Atlanta is going to finish in fourth, maybe a few points above Charlotte. But I think Atlanta will be fourth in the East at minimum, and then the ceiling I think will start to be MLS Cup for them.
Yeah, I mean, I love the hype, and I don't think it's really that much of a homer hype because I don't try to buy into this hype, but it's tough not to do with this Atlanta side, right?
Mm,
I don't think top four in the East is out of the question. I actually think it's expected because not only have you gotten better, other teams in that area have gotten less
yeah,
good, right?
yeah.
They have gotten very strong. And you always see there's always one team, right, that goes from nearly out or out of the playoffs into legit good in a season or two, right? And Atlanta feels like the team that's going to do that this year. So, yeah, I don't think it's a homer pick. I don't think it's. I think you've got it pretty much. I think a lot of people think that too because the attack runs MLS. It just does, right? It's the way that the world works in this league, and you've got a pretty good one. So,
Hopefully.
listen, yeah, listen, I want to thank you so much, Sid, for being here and having this
Yeah.
conversation with us. Such a good time as always. Want to give you some time to tell people who you are, where to find you, and what you do.
Yeah, I'm with Scarves and Spikes, Atlanta United podcast, Atlanta United and MLS podcast. We're making a concerted effort to really cover MLS
Nice.
heavily this season. We started a little bit toward the end of last season, but we really want to throw a lot more resources there. Primary show, Atlanta United Focus show, Wednesday Night Live, 7 p.m. Eastern, YouTube, X, Facebook, so you can catch us there. Our Monday night show is more MLS focused. That's at 7 p.m. on Monday nights. We're going to do a Sunday night stream every Sunday around 9 p.m. Eastern time, kind of talking about the previous match for Atlanta United. And then we have content all day. Every match day, we have content, pre-match shows. We have three takeaways after every Atlanta United match. And we'll also be, if you're watching in the Atlanta area, I'll kind of plug this. If you're watching in the Atlanta area, on February 22nd, we will be at the Signia by Hilton Hotel, which is right across from Mercedes-Benz Stadium. We'll be at the Nest on 4 Bar, doing a live podcast from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. So that'll be streaming on YouTube, X, Facebook. We'll be doing those throughout the season. So look for those certainly throughout the regular season, and then through the FIFA Club World Cup throughout the various matches that Atlanta have going on there. I personally am at SH Writes, SHWRITES, and then the podcast collectively is Scarves, the letter N Spikes on social. You can just search for us anywhere. You can find us, and then you can follow us, our podcast feed on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and iHeart. And subscribe on YouTube as well.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Sorry.
No, but it's good. Listen, there's a reason it's a lot because you guys do a lot. So literally the best of the best in Atlanta, and I'm very excited to see how you guys expand out into just general MLS because you guys are so dedicated to Atlanta on its own. I can't wait to see what resource you're going to put in towards that. So go give them a follow. If you guys are new here, this is the first time you're seeing us. This is the 28th of 30 interviews that we are doing for preseason of MLS 2025. You can go and follow us and listen to all the ones that we've heard in the past, or the two that are coming up after this, but do a lot of that. And then during the season, it's MLS news. So when MLS inevitably makes some silly rule change or decision that makes everybody go crazy, we'll share our thoughts on it. Usually player moves, coaches in, coaches out, all that sort of stuff. We like to cover all of that. And then we have an MLS history segment. So if you are a new Atlanta fan who only started following when Atlanta came in, that's awesome. If you are here and looking to figure out what made this league what it is, we cover those fan selected stories every week as best we can. So if you're into that stuff too, come give us a follow and be a part of it. Sid, thanks so much again for being here. We really appreciate it. Listeners, thanks so much for listening to us. And we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.